What's going on, guys? Welcome back to the Honeystead. I feel like I need to be playing catch up with you guys. As you guys kind of have possibly seen in not my last video but the video before that, my friend Jill from Whispering Willow Farm came out after the Homesteaders of America conference, and her and I have been working on a project together. We've actually been working on like multiple projects together. We just launched our winter wellness guide, which if you are interested in that, that is going to be put down below, and I'll also pin that into the description. The winter wellness guide is packed full of a whole bunch of goodies of different remedies and recipes that her and I both utilize in our homes to help better support our bodies for cold and flu season. And in fact, one of the recipes that's going to be in the guide is something that I'm working on back in the apothecary, and we'll be going in there next to finish that up. And I'll have to tell you why I ended up doing so much of it in a very short period of time. I'm human and we make errors. But on top of the winter wellness guide, her and I are putting together a home apothecary course, an actual herbalism course for you guys, basically breaking it down how we learned and how we started incorporating the herbs and kind of simplifying it in a way to make it so much more accessible and easier, I feel, for you growing herbalist in your own home. So very excited about that. We'll be keeping you informed with all of the dates and everything that's coming up. But in the meantime, I gotta tell you about my mess up. So I had a little bit of a mess up the other day when I was rearranging things in my freezer. It's hunting season, and you guys know, if any of you if you are hunters or if you have family members who are hunters, you know what that means. That means you got to move some things around, and I have a interesting relationship with my freezer anyways. Sometimes things get put in there and forgotten. So I was arranging things, and I guess I forgot to shut the door all the way. And it wasn't a complete and total loss, but it very much could have been. I had probably about 4 bags of bones from our livestock that we raise here, some beef stock, some beef bones, and I have been planning on making bone broth, and it actually works out perfectly because my bone broth recipe is in the winter wellness guide. So if you are interested in that, it is in the guide. But instead of losing all of my bones, I quickly grabbed them, got them processed, and then got the beautiful gelatin that the bone broth has to offer, which is something that I very much use and incorporate in my daily life. First thing in the morning, I'll make a little bit, drink it. It is just so good for you. But then I was left with a lot of gelatin, and instead of canning it, which I've done in the past, I was like, you know what, I wonder if we can freeze dry it. And sure enough, I went and I found out that people are freeze drying the gelatin, and so it's done. It has been freeze drying now for like, I think close to 36 hours, probably 36 hours. And I'm excited to pull it out of the freeze dryer to see what it looks like. So come on, let's go. It's like bone broth styrofoam. Like, I don't know how else to describe it other than it is like styrofoam. And I rearranged some things, so bear with me. I'm there it is. Still looking for things. So my plan is I'm going to take some of this bone broth and I'm going to put it in a regular mason jar so that I can carry it back with me. But obviously it's only going to be a little bit at a time that I'm going to use for my daily consumption. I like to take bone broth first thing in the morning. Really, I've been doing bone broth before I actually even drink my coffee. And I know that sounds crazy, but there's so much goodness that this bone broth has to offer for my gut, and gut health is key. Now, I use bone broth as my stocks, my bases when I'm cooking with things. It's packed full of minerals. It's packed full of minerals. It's good for my gut. I mean, it tastes good. And what I love about bone broth, it's the scraps to make it. It's the waste to make it. So anytime you're cooking like a chicken, I will take the chicken carcass and I will freeze it until I have, you know, a handful of them. And then I'll cook it all down at one time. I save my onion scraps, my carrot scraps. The pigs don't exactly like that too much. But when I try to save my scraps for my broth, but I want you to hear, I want you to hear this, because this is and I say it is styrofoam, I mean it's like turned it into styrofoam. Now, okay, you can't dehydrate. Well, you probably could. It would take a long time to dehydrate bone broth, and I don't know what's the consistency. I don't even know if you can do that. I have canned bone broth before, but even that, you know, when you can things, it's not, when you pressure can your bone broth to preserve it, it doesn't last as long. But one of the reasons why I chose to freeze dry it is because essentially freeze drying your bone broth, or freeze drying anything really, if stored properly, this can last up to 25 years. I'll probably go through it until our next harvest, and then after that, I'll take the bones. I promise that I will take them as soon as I get them, and I will go ahead and do this instead of putting it into my freezer and then completely forgetting about them, because my freezer tends to become the land of the unknown. So I promise I will do better, but on the same breath, I'm glad that I was able to share my recipe in the Winter Wellness Guide. And then I'm glad I'm able to share that I had a mishap and a mess up, and I was still able to, thankfully, oh my goodness, thankfully, I was still able to utilize the bones from the freezer. Now, my plan is to powder this. I'm gonna store some in a mason jar. I'm gonna store some in a Mylar bag, and then utilize probably, I'm gonna kind of like estimate maybe 2 tablespoons of the powder. And I've got to play around with the ratio because I genuinely don't know. I cannot get over the crunch. All right, we're gonna start. Seriously, like, might have to smash this down a little bit to get it to all fit. But with bone broth, this is with beef. I've also done chicken. I have not really done pork, but I probably plan on doing some, because we typically will, like if I do like a ham, I'll save the bones, and then that's what I'll use for like my bean soup. Like whenever I'm doing a good bean soup, which I'm due for that as well. Another way to go ahead and preserve your bone broth, you could pressure can it like I've done in the past, but I wanted to explore this as an option on preservation, because I feel like for me it's just going to be so much simpler to just grab a little bit of powder, put it in a cup, and add my water as needed, or add it in to a lot of my meals depending on the amount that I need. But another way to do it in small quantities instead of freezing it in one large like freezer bag or container, but you could use ice cube trays if you want. That's a perfect little amount. You can also go in and use the breast milk bags. Surprisingly, those work really well for single serving. You can just grab one out as you need it and drink it. But I think this might be my favorite way from now on, is to do it freeze dried versus freezing it and then forgetting about it, or potentially losing it like I almost did. I almost lost a lot of bones, and that would have been really devastating. You know, I am now like gonna check myself 100 times. Every time I open up the freezer, I'm probably gonna look at it like 20 times. But for me, like, now having the peace of mind that this is already freeze dried, the moisture has already been pulled out of it. That's why it's able to be shelf life stable for this many, you know, 25 years, as long as it's stored properly. Some of the reasons why that I go to bone broth for my own health is mainly because it's packed full of nutrients and vitamins, calcium, magnesium, amino acids, things that will help support my body. Other factors are it is loaded with collagen. I mean, that gelatin is real. I mean, the wiggle, I jiggle, and of course I actually dropped my jiggle, but I picked it back up because my floors were clean and I didn't want it to go to waste. If you saw that on Instagram and Facebook, I don't apologize for that. It's also good for my immune system. It also has anti-inflammatory properties. It will help with hydration in your body. It's great for your stomach. There's just so much that bone broth has to offer. And essentially you can create it with things that you would consider as scraps. I mean, these are from bones. These are bones that, what are you gonna do with it? Well, you're gonna use it. And to me, it takes a lot of work to raise an animal, from, you know, young to processing age. I want to be able to utilize that animal to the fullest, and you know, that is something that I want to honor that animal for feeding my family. And instead of discarding something that would be waste, I want to take it and turn it back into something that could help support my health and my family's health. And what better way? Now, I know that not everybody has a farm or a homestead, that they can't necessarily raise an animal for themselves, but there are options. There's getting connected with farmers that are in your area that might be able to sell you bones. Or possibly buy half of a cow, or, you know, a full cow if you have a large family. I also think that it's really important for you, if you are sourcing out meat for your family, I mean, try to get the best quality that you possibly can. I love supporting local farmers as well. So I have a good friend of mine that lives down the road. She has a beautiful cattle farm, and I'm gonna hopefully introduce her to you pretty soon, because she has a lot of the tallow that I did not get. That's a whole nother story. I didn't get my tallow from this, but I'm due to make some lotion for myself, and we will talk all about that, because I know a lot of people ask, like, what do you use on your skin? And that's, yeah, we'll talk more about that. But try to find somebody who is local and, you know, have a relationship with them. It will help support their farm, which will help support your family, which in turn it builds a community. And I think that that is what is most important. Now, if you don't have that option, you know, do the very best that you possibly can. And I think that take a little stress off of your shoulders. Not, I have to break this up just a little bit more. Probably should have done 3 bags. But if you don't have that option to have a farmer potentially in your area, you know, don't stress. Do the best that you can. That, I think, that's what we're all doing. We're all doing the very best that we possibly can. Okay. All right. I am happy with that. Now, if anybody has any questions about the Harvest Right freeze dryer, go ahead and just put them down below. I try to answer them as best as I can. I've got bone broth I have to clean, bone broth crumbles, which I will be bone broth styrofoam. If anybody has any questions about the Harvest Right freeze dryer, just put them down below. I do my very possibly best to try to answer them with you. I'm not sounding, but I don't know how to speak today. If anyone has any questions about that thing, put them down below. I will do my best to answer them as I see them. And yes, if you are interested in purchasing a Harvest Right freeze dryer, I do have an affiliate link that is going to be in the descriptions box, as well as this lovely winter wellness course with all the goodies that's in that. I think it's 60 pages, all of it. It's 60 pages of all of our recipes, tea blends, tinctures, some different soup recipes, a really good vegetable soup, the bone broth, my mushroom, immunomodulator broth, as well as elderberry syrup, my pineapple tea, which I'm due to make that because that is my absolute favorite. I call it bromelain tea. If you know much about pineapple, it has a substance in it called bromelain. Very good for you, but all of that is in that winter wellness guide. That has been a little labor of love, and I'm very excited about that, as well as the home apothecary course that we are going to be putting out. Like, it's going to be available to get. I think we're going to do an early bird purchase like Black Friday, which is like crazy. So it's coming. All of that will be, I will be announcing it. So as always, don't be afraid to get your hands dirty and learn something old. Bye guys.